guys, how's it going? Today, Aaron and I want to recap 2024.
Kind of an annual tradition at this point.
I think it's a good tradition to have, to kind of reflect on the things that we did this year,
Yeah.
big and small. I mean, we're not going to talk a lot about the small things because we put out
A lot of
many
videos, like around 250 on the main channel, and then on the highlights channel, probably another 50 or so. So 300.
Close to 300 videos.
Yeah.
That's a lot. We did a lot of planting this year, and we were home for most of it. We only went on one trip to Chicago, and I don't know though, that's my favorite kind of year. Just staying at home,
Sure.
working in the garden, just loving it. And I feel like some areas we saw kind of come together, others
Maybe got a little worse.
maybe a little worse. But that's just kind of the name of the game, and we'll see more of that this next year too.
Yeah.
With areas we're thinking about tearing out and new ones we're going to create, and it's just kind of the name of the game, and your landscapes evolve. And anyway, yeah, we're going to start at the beginning of this year, and we pulled a bunch of what we feel like are highlights to our garden space or highlight projects to talk about. So the first thing that we did this last year was we were able to acquire 2 more pieces of land that attached to ours. And they both belong to the same neighbor, but they're disconnected. 2 acres behind our white barn, and then 2 acres that we added to the dirt lands, which brings our total acreage to 12?
Yeah, I think just under 12.
12 acres. And that was just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, those were the last 2 pieces that we could,
That made sense for us to buy.
Right. So we're done with that.
Yeah, pretty much. I think we're probably done expanding.
Yeah, which is nice to know, because then you can start making some really firm plans, because it was always on our brain,
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, if we could, attach those 2, if we could get those at some point,
Right.
because we knew our neighbor was kind of thinking of, he had toyed around with selling it to us before.
Well, for years we had talked about buying, so we kind of knew that it was a serious possibility, but you still have to agree on the amount and things like that.
Right.
And then all the rigmarole of like actually going through the county to separate the land, and you're kind of just hopeful that that's all going to work out,
Right.
and that you'll be allowed to split the land the way that we wanted to. So it worked out.
It did. It worked out beautifully, and it's just added so much, I feel like, to our landscape, and gave us the ability to, start some great big tree borders. And it also, for future possible horse barn projects, which is not, it's not even on our docket. It's not even on the plans as of yet. It's just like kind of one of those dreams that's out there. You won't see that happen this next year for sure.
No, I can't imagine.
No.
Unless, I did buy a Powerball ticket though, and I haven't checked the numbers. So, we won't rule it out.
I'm not even thinking about it at this point, but what the land did was allowed us to kind of retool where we were thinking of having a barn, because at first we were going to just use the red barn for animals, and it just really wasn't set up the way that we wanted it to, or positioned in the area we wanted it to. But adding that 2 acres that attached to the other piece that we had that all kind of formed the dirt lands, that allowed us to really have a lot of space, and we can have a little bit of a bigger barn and position it right where we want to eventually. Without that land, we would have organized differently.
Yeah, it would have been a little odd.
Yeah. So that was the first thing. That was the very first of the year. We announced that. And then on January the 9th, we had our first big tree delivered. So Malad Tree Farm brought out a blue spruce, and we planted it along a new fence line. So the fence happened before we actually
bought the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were already, it was deep into the process, and we had new fences put in before it was completely secured. So thankfully everything went well.
Yeah.
But we had this new fence line in front of our neighbor's house, and so we had that first spruce brought in, and the ground was perfect. It wasn't frozen, it wasn't too muddy. So he brought that out, and I think the reason he did was because he was already coming over. We had to have 3 trees moved from the north garden, which is where the dream stream is, because we knew the dream stream was going to happen.
Yeah.
So he came in, and was it 3? There was a blue spruce, there was an Austrian pine, and maybe another blue spruce.
Yeah, I want to say that they moved a couple trees with the small spade and then one with the big one. And he was kind of, I think we had talked about, he was like, well, I could bring one because I got to come anyway.
Yeah.
So I can get you a deal on just bringing a tree.
Yeah.
So he did.
Yeah, that was really nice. And we moved one of the big spruces to right behind the greenhouse next to the barn. And that was just a perfect location, I feel like, for that tree. Next up, mid-February, we started tearing down the big lights around the basketball court on the new property behind the barn. So it has a basketball court on it, and there were 4 really tall lights.
Yeah.
that I had maybe seen used one time.
I don't think that they had bulbs in them. They were like the halogen bulbs.
I kind of remember seeing the light when we very first moved in.
Really?
But maybe I'm just
imagining. We've been here for a long time, and maybe he pulled out the lights at some point. But they weren't in use. I mean, you couldn't just turn them on easily, and we didn't like the look of them kind of towering over everything. So it just made sense to pull them down.
Well, and when we did that, I remember a bunch of you guys wondered, well, what about your kids? Don't you think they would want to use those? But we're kind of the opinion that you use things when it's light outside and you don't bounce basketballs after it's dark at night.
Yeah.
So we're not going to host a basketball game out here with the lights on for all of our neighbors to hear. So we just figured that we probably wouldn't utilize those, and getting them down was really nice. It was kind of like getting the power poles removed. Anything that's towering above your space, it's nice to clean up that view if you can, and that was really nice. At the very same time, Paul and I think Bethany tore down the old chicken coop that was on the property just beyond the basketball court, and that is right where the play set is now, and that was satisfying. I don't know, I kept looking at it thinking, do I want to move the chickens? Do we want to try to utilize this? But when we got to looking at it closer, it was kind of a cobbled situation, and I didn't know how much longer it would last. Yeah. So it just seemed better to take it down. And Paul and Bethany, they take all of the supplies away. Some of them, I think they were just mangled, but some of them are usable. So we try to give away whatever we can that's usable. After that, on February the 28th, we did our very first planting project of the season, minus the big tree, I guess. But it was the first one that I did, and we planted a serviceberry and a miniature peach tree, I think. But I remember that day feeling like the sun was coming down. It was still, it felt warm. The kids and I laid in the grass, like it was dried up enough to where we could lay in the grass and not get all wet. And that's kind of a banner day to me. Yeah. Like the first planting day of the season. And then fast forward to mid-March, I planted all of the show-off forsythias in the west side pots. And was that ever an amazing thing? I almost kind of thinking maybe we should do that again this year. I mean, because I want a lot of that yellow spring interest out in the dirt lands, especially like along the border. So if we can, we're removing the pots though, aren't we?
I was just going to say that. I feel like I'm always the bearer of bad news. It's like, but you can't.
But you can't. Well, I could still plant those up with show-off forsythias, just have them positioned somewhere else. I don't know, it's just so fun when you can utilize a shrub like that and have them be glorious. They were in full peak color for weeks. Yeah. It feels like they were sticks when I planted them with kind of swollen buds on them. And you could see that they were going to be full of flower, but I wasn't sure. When we did the video, I'm kind of like, this is the least satisfying video because the pansies weren't in very big color yet. Yeah. The forsythias look like sticks, and I'm like, this is faith in planting, you guys. And it really turned out well. And some of those projects I kind of sweat bullets a little bit, thinking, oh, I hope this turns out. Sure. I hope this isn't a huge disappointment. But they were great, and then we planted them out in the dirt lands. They all put on a whole bunch of new growth this year, every single one of them. And I did groupings of 5, I think 2 groupings of 5, so we should have some great big yellow color this spring. And then just about a week later, the big elm tree on the new property behind the barn was taken out. It was a kind of a snag, like it was cut up already. And elm trees, the type we have here, are not nice. And they get full of borers. They spread those little white disc seeds everywhere, and the seedlings, like the seedling will be this big, and the roots go down about this far, and they just take hold. So they're kind of a pain. We were happy to get that gone. Not only were we happy to have that removed, but our other neighbor.
He was wanting that gone so bad.
Yeah, and he actually, when the previous owner had this property still, I saw them out there, and Gary was over there helping him because he, trim it up. Sure. Because there were huge branches coming out over their fence into their yard, and it was just making a huge mess every time there was a windstorm. There were sticks everywhere, branches everywhere. So he was thrilled when that came out. And that's always fun when it benefits more than just yourself, And then April 1st, the Bobcat edition.
Oh, that was the best edition.
It truly is.
We got so much use out of that piece of machinery. Yeah. I'm so happy that I discovered the front end loader type of machine, because if you're in need of like a skid steer, a front end loader will do the exact same thing. A wheel loader will do the exact same thing. It is a little bit bigger and it's a little more cumbersome, so you have to have space, which we do. We've got a lot of space, but it doesn't tear up the ground. Right. A skid steer just tears up everything, but a wheel loader, it just doesn't, because it doesn't skid, you know, like it's in the name, a skid steer. It will skid on the ground and just, it'll tear up grass, tear up gravel, and this just glides on the ground. And so we can drive it on the grass as long as the grass hasn't been like just freshly watered, or as long as it didn't just rain. But as long as the grass has had a couple days to dry out, you can totally just drive it on the grass, no big deal. So yeah, super happy with that machine.
On the auger.
Yeah.
I mean, the auger and the hydraulic pincher, is that what you call them? Being able to pick up B&B trees and lift them up and cut out all of the stuff underneath while you're standing. Like all of those little helps as we get older. So nice.
Well, and getting it this year was the most impactful because of all the things that we planted. I mean, we planted so many trees this year. Yeah. Hundreds. Yeah. And so, you know, we wouldn't have gotten as much use in previous years, but we certainly put it to work this year. I'm
not super comfortable driving that one though.
Really?
I've never been real comfortable driving a tractor. Forklifts, no problem. Tractors, especially this one, I don't know why. I just feel like it's such a big machine. Sure. And yeah, I can do it, but I've never operated the auger or the pinchers or any of that. Nope. Just a few days after that, we did the big pond clean out.
that was kind of an issue that we had.
Well, even Chris, who's our Aquascape contact here locally, he was like, this is the worst algae that we've ever seen. We've learned different things about what we can add and when and how we can control it. We do have a little bit of string algae in the pond currently, but it's a brand new, it's essentially a brand new pond because everything was cleared out and the dream stream was added. So you add on that many feet, all of that surface area, all the extra water and more shallow water too. But I think we'll be much better equipped this next year. Yeah. And I do think Brian and Greg are planning on coming out, both of them, to do a big pond clean out again in the spring, just to kind of bring it back to square one. And we're learning a lot through the whole process. We enjoy it so much. I even enjoyed the clean out, to be honest, because it was so satisfying. Yeah. I was like, give me a pressure washer. Just give it to me. I want to be out in there and I want to be pressure washing all these rocks. Oh, it was so satisfying. Right after that, I was out in the cut flower garden picking daffodils to give away. And it was kind of the beginning of that cut flower garden color, or the cut flower garden season. We planted 1 full row of daffs and then 3 full rows. And these are 60 feet rows. And I think I did 5 rows of bulbs per 60-foot run. So that's a lot. It was a lot of bulbs and it was so beautiful. And I positioned the daffodils nearest our driving lane because I knew that would be the first color that we would see. And then, and I also feel like the leaves on those as they're drying aren't as egregious as tulip leaves. Tulip leaves just look horrible when they're drying down. And then the 3 rows of tulips went kind of like the best series. These are all from color blends, but we did the best series, best pink, white, blah, blah, blah. And those were the earliest. And then we did a lily flowered tulip row and then a double flowered tulip row. And it was just a phenomenal.
It was a good look.
It really was a good look. And it was an experiment too, because I took a garden hoe and I made like the tiniest little in the soil, just enough so that I could rest a bulb in there and not have it tip. And then we dumped compost over the top. Yeah. Just straight compost, like this much. And it didn't make it necessarily, I think it is easier to do that as opposed to trench method, which I hate, and auger, which I love, but when you're planting them that close together, you aug holes and then they backfill on each other if you're too close to the previous hole that you dug. So we just decided, let's just line them up and bury them with compost to see what happens. And it was great. And they rooted in like crazy. I thought when I went out to pull those bulbs out that they would just bop, 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 and it was like pulling teeth. Literally, figuratively, to get those out of the soil. It was difficult, but boy, we've gotten some mileage out of those bulbs. They're in crates right now in the high tunnel, and we'll bring them into the heat here in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll have some really good color from them again. A couple of days later, Brian Helfrich from Aquascape and Colleen, who's their CEO, they came out and laid out the dream stream. It was really nice to see them. We got to spend some time together and go out to eat, and it was fun just to see like Brian's brain.
He is an artist.
He's an absolute artist. I don't know that I would trust anybody else with, honestly.
Well, Greg says that Brian's the best.
Yeah.
I assume Greg is, I've never really seen Greg like design a pond, But I would assume he knows. You know, he's seen a lot.
I have seen a lot of the other artists that have been here helping us through these projects because I follow all of them now on social media, and so I get to see their pond builds too, and they're all beautiful.
Yeah.
So everybody does a beautiful job, but I've only just ever experienced Brian and his, like, watching his brain work. He just stands there and can take in the space and then, like, boom, painted it out, done.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be great, and super confident about it. And I think he's just been doing it for so long. I mean, not only does he have the talent, but he has the knowledge that when he gets into the project, things are going to shift and change a bit, and that's good, you know, and everything will end up being gorgeous. And looking at it right now, it is phenomenal. Next up, we got our first, I think, was it our first Jaker load of trees? That was April 17th. Everything was still like fairly devoid of leaves, except for the evergreens that we got. But we got to plant the first B&Bs with the bobcat. That was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun. It just kind of like, it was eye-opening at the realization that things are going to get easier.
Sure.
And we can get these Jaker loads, and it's not going to be this huge like burden chore to get done.
It just takes time, but it's not, you know, before, okay, so some of those B&B trees, they feel like they're 300 pounds.
Well, they might be.
And, you know, so when you're trying to wrangle them, when we were using the forklift on the previous tractor without the pinchers, you know, trying to get it to move around and push it onto the forks, that's so much work on your body.
Right.
And, you know, it basically takes all the work out of it. So
it was awesome.
Having the tractor.
Yeah.
The new one.
And then on April 23rd, I cut some tulips to give away. And that same day, I used a new rototiller that we bought. That was a kind of a, it was a fun new addition to do our potato bed prep. And we don't till usually in a lot of areas, but in those types of areas where I need to bury tubers, you know, a certain amount of depth, and I know I need to do in large quantities, it's so nice to go through with a tiller and just work in all the compost that we have on the ground. We add biotone and land and sea every time we plant some kind of new crop. And so we're just piling that on top. So if you kind of work it in, it feels good.
Yeah.
And we have such good yields and such good success out there in that space. But having that little tiller is nice, and we were able to let other people borrow it through the year, which is also nice. I think Paul and Bethany had it out at Bethany's.
Yeah.
And then
your brother came and got it too.
Yeah, my brother came and got it. We've also been able to lend out the bobcat.
Yeah.
I think at Bethany, they were doing a big fencing project. So they were able to use the bobcat, and Paul was just, you was able to drive it right out there. So it's kind of nice to have those things that, you know, again, are helpful to other people. On May the 1st, we did our play set reveal.
Yeah.
Aaron, you kind of led the charge on this project.
Yeah, the kids did get a lot of use out of it this year.
They did.
And I think that they'll continue to use it. It's like, it's the first thing that the kids will go out and do when friends come over. And that's kind of the idea, is like they can go out and play on something like that. So
I feel like it adds to like the play area. You know, you've got the basketball court out there, which got a lot of use out of that court.
Yeah, we did.
Oh my word. I mean, actually have a new pair of roller skates coming for Benjamin today. When we cleaned out the greenhouse the other day, and I was showing you all the stuff that had gotten wet out on the court, we were letting it dry, but Benjamin, his poor skates got so much use that the end was blowing out. We had duct tape over it. I thought, no, we need to get him a new pair. Yeah. So his will arrive today, but we did roller skating, including myself. Lots of basketball, lots of just chilling out there while the kids just messed around that area. It's just so nice. May 10th, we got our first big annual load. Did we get it all at once?
You know, I think we got most everything. There was a couple stragglers.
That's true.
Because they'll let us know. They'll be like, hey, we can bring these, but they're small or whatever.
Yeah.
And we just said, oh, keep growing them on.
Yeah.
We'll wait. They
have more of a controlled environment. I have a place now that we could grow them on, but we have so many other things coming, like coleus in particular. What are the other things? If we have any caladiums that come in and it's still like on May 10th, it's still a little iffy if it's going to get too cold. So I like to put the more tender things straight away in the heated greenhouse, because we can button that up. Even if we're not heating it at that point, we can button up the sides and keep any like intense chill off of them. The high tunnels have open ends, or did when we had it out there. So everything else went in there. I think we did cover it for like 2 nights. Yeah. Because the day we got that load, it was supposed to freeze that night. Right. I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And the rest of the 10-day, I think there was one more night that was close, and the rest of it looked really good. But you just kind of have to do whatever, you know, is required at that moment. Toward the end of May, we planted all those boxwoods in the parking area, which I feel like changed that space quite a lot.
They all survived.
They all survived, which is a wonder because
whenever you plant a lot of anything, you know, you kind of plan for like a little bit of loss.
Well, I have 3 extras in the high tunnel. We always plan for extra. And also I planted 3, 6, 9, 12 of them on 3 on either side of the benches in the parterre. So it's nice to have some backstock just in case. What I should do with those 3 is just plant them somewhere toward like an easy access area of a flower bed.
Yeah.
So that if we do need to go in and dig them out to replace one, we can, and they should be roughly the same size as what we currently have. I think that having those boxwoods, they're green towers, right? They grow like 9 feet tall, 2 feet wide, so very, very skinny, which in that area is what we needed, and we planted them between the red point maple trunks. We want to top them at about 6 probably, and just have a nice, just thin hedge right there. There's nothing egregious behind it. There's nothing, like the view is just of a well-kept lane and a fence, you know. There's nothing bad back there, but we like to look at green.
Right.
So I was very excited to add those. And then on June the 5th, we added the fountain base in the brick circle area, which that was a really fun project. That planter was an absolute beast.
Yeah.
I loved it at planting, and I loved it about a month and a half later. And then the plants, and I could have gone in and trimmed them and kept it a little more tidy, but I just kind of like to see what plants will do. I don't want to have to go in and trim stuff. So I just let it go. And it was this monster of a container. I mean, the plants really showed off, you know, their ability in that space. But we have it still there. I can see it from here. And I think we'll just probably leave it there until we either find the perfect piece or until it completely crumbles and falls apart. The reason why we're using it as a planter is it already has some minor cracks in it. Not enough to worry about it falling apart like right away, but we'll get some use out of it until it does. And then on June the 7th, we had a huge load of trees come in. That was the Spring Grove Arborvitae load. Now, I don't think I was even really involved in that, was I? I don't even remember. It was so long ago now.
I was not prepared for the amount of work it was going to take to get those off of the truck. It was all day, and they were heavy. And, you know, what Paul and I ended up doing is just attaching chains to the B&Bs and then dragging them to the edge of the truck.
That load was full of Spring Groves. I don't remember even how many we ordered, like as many as they had.
Yeah.
I think we ordered as many as they had in the largest size we could get, and then we had to even fill in with a few of the size down. We also got in some North Pole arbs to fill in some spots, and we had part of Andrew's, my parents' garden center, load on that truck too. And theirs was such a minor part that I just told them, come here, unload everything here, and then I will load up and take whatever it is theirs down to the garden center. Because in that same load, we had cone boxwoods for my parents' pots that line their driveway. We also had cone boxwoods that I put around the benches in the cut flower garden. Now, I'm going to need to call it the formal flower garden now.
Yeah.
But that was such a wonderful addition because up to that point, all we had for winter interest were the benches out there. And then just adding those 2 plants on either side just kind of helps weigh it. You know, there's some weight there. Now there's a tremendous amount of winter interest out there, and I'm loving it. On June the 26th, we removed the tiger eye sumacs.
Oh.
To my understanding, when I planted them, they were not supposed to sucker like the older varieties of sumacs. And they didn't for the first 3 years. They were gorgeous. They stayed to themselves. And it was last year that they just started running everywhere. And I thought, well, maybe we can, you know, we can manage this. It's fine. And then it just got worse and worse. They were coming up in the grass. They were coming up everywhere. And honestly, in that space, I loved their fall color and I loved the structure of the trees. I did not love the yellow tone of their leaves because I think they'd be great around the pond. I think that would be so pretty. I would not plant them again, but they would be so pretty there. But with everything else I had around them, I felt like it was too much yellow, and it's already dry and hot out there anyway in the summer. I just thought, oh, it's making it look drier out there when it's not. So let's put something like either burgundy or deep green in this space to give it that lush factor. So it was a good change. Then on June the 28th, we announced our Garden Answer exclusive Auger collection.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that was a pretty big deal to me because to have a tool that you can create and like refine, I mean, we didn't create the tool. We just refined what was already out there to make it the best that I could possibly think of.
For your purposes.
For my purposes. And I feel like we're all doing a lot of the same chores out there in the garden. And I'm pretty average in terms of like height and all of that. So I felt like it would be so useful. So they're all 36 inches. We have a 2, 3, 5, 7, and 9 inch auger. They all are all one piece. So you're not dealing with the tips that you have to replace or you have to take off or anything that like could be a weak point. So anyway, I was just very, very excited about that. And you guys were so excited along with us and so supportive of it. It was like a pretty awesome deal.
Yeah, it was impressive how many people supported and bought one. And hopefully they're finding as much use out of it as we
hope so.
are.
Yeah. We really like it. Like I've even thought about, are there any other like little tweaks we could do to refine this? No. And I like them. I like that they're black. We thought about doing a different color, but I just don't, they do chip, the paint chips on those kinds of things. And even the black will eventually, and the auger part will be silver in the end. We thought about just going straight silver so that there wouldn't be any kind of look like that.
Sure.
But I just tend to like very subdued and more, I don't know.
Classic
look.
looks.
So I am very happy with those. On July 18th, we did a garden tour, and I feel like that was a really good tour.
Yeah.
It's not like we did anything special in that video, but I feel like things were starting to, like I remember the Vista bubblegum on the South Garden Loop was starting to fill in.
Well, and I think it was like the drone footage at the end that was.
Oh, was that the one? That was the one with Benjamin.
Yeah, it was really like, cute. He was running. He loves to do that. He loves to be chased by the drone. Whenever I get the drone out there, he just immediately runs outside and looks for it, and then you can tell he's like that little kid, like, please chase me, you know?
Yeah, right. Well, and I feel like it was early enough, nothing was very weary yet.
Yeah.
But it was late enough to where the annuals we had planted had some time to put on some growth. So it was just a really good time. And then on July the 22nd was the beginning of our Aquascape kind of tour. We got to go to Chicago to Aqualand.
Yeah.
And the first day, we were able to tour some private gardens and ponds. And we were there along with a bunch of, Brian and Greg and Kevin and Jacques from Epic Gardening and Epic Homestead and Jacques in the Garden. Ed, the pond professor, was there. There was a whole bunch of, I can't even think of everybody's name, but we did a little vlog of those tours. And on that day, when we got to the last place, I was like, stop the current video. I got to start a new one. We went to Peggy Judd's house. It was the most spectacular garden. I was just like
in awe.
Whoa.
Well, and the stars aligned because the weather was nice.
Yes.
It was in the 70s.
It wasn't humid. People were like, this is weird.
Yeah, there was no humidity. There was no bugs.
Yeah.
It was just like a beautiful day. And so that kind of added to the magic.
It did. Well, and Peggy was such a wonderful hostess and just a rock star, honestly. I asked her, like, do you mind being mic'd up? Will you want to walk us through your garden? And she was like, sure. Yeah. And she was a little nervous at first, but then just like, it was awesome. And she just toured us through her space. So we got to see her pond and pool and all the many gardens underneath this canopy of oak trees. And I still think about that garden. And she sent out some really beautiful fish sculptures to go around our pond that I really liked at her pond, which was really sweet of her. But I know the thing that made me the most happy about that, I mean, I left with my inspiration cup like overflowing, and I love that feeling. I don't get that all the time, but I loved to see your reaction, all of you guys who watched that video and commented, and I knew Peggy was reading all of the comments, and I think it was filling her up too. I mean, what an encouragement you guys were to her, and that is a special thing. I loved that. On July the 26th, right after we got home, we did a tour of our first warehouse, which we are not in anymore. But it was a far cry better than where it started out, which was in Ken and Natalie's garage. And that was such a blessing to be able to utilize their space in the beginning, because you start really small. And we've kind of grown it in an organic way, like we're funding it ourselves, all of that stuff. Yeah. So we're just kind of growing as we can.
Well, it started off in his garage as basically t-shirts, sweatshirts, and like Felco pruners.
Yeah.
And you can manage it in a garage when that's, because Felcos aren't that large.
Right.
And you can keep quite a few of them in just a box. But once you start adding a couple more products, all of a sudden, the space starts getting real tight real fast.
So we grew out of his garage and then went to the only warehouse that was available in our town.
Yeah, we were looking for quite a while actually for a space, and we looked at some other real sketch places.
They weren't technically warehouse. It was like old shops and stuff.
Right.
Like mechanic kind of situations, and it just didn't seem... It was a real sketch area, so this one opened up, and it worked for us for several months, and we weren't even in there for a full year. It wasn't set up super efficiently, and we went through all of that in that first tour. But anyway, then a few days after that, August 21st, we had the sod and pavers installed in front of the Hartley.
Oh, yeah.
That sod experience was one of the best experiences ever.
Well, it never browned out.
No.
It was just like glorious grass.
And it was hot.
It was
we were
really
nervous. Hot. Yeah. Well, you were very diligent about watching it for water, making sure the schedule stayed.
I think I was watering it like 10 times a day or something like that.
Like for 3 minutes?
Yeah, or like 2.
Yeah.
I mean, you just turn the water. I mean, basically just keeping it just continually wet on the top so it never dries out. But yeah, you run it for, because it was one zone.
Right.
And I don't even know if I was running it for more than like a minute or 2.
Maybe not.
Because if you can run it for 10 times, just pop it on, just to keep the top layer going. And it did great.
Yeah, that was just a really fun experience because I'd never experienced putting sod in. And we thought, this is such a small area compared to the other grass areas we're doing. Let's just try it and see what happens. Then on August the 26th, we installed the large fountain in the formal flower garden.
Oh, yeah.
I have to say, when we opened those pieces up, I was like
stressed.
Stomach drop. Like, this is white. Like, this fountain looks white. It did not look white when I ordered it. It looked gray, like natural concrete, and that's what I want. And this was expensive. We did not get a deal on this fountain. We paid full price for this fountain.
Right. Except for 10% because I signed up for their email list. It was like a little pop-up on the screen. Really? I was like, oh, well, 10% on a larger fountain actually.
That was significant, yeah. So I had stain out there. The stain that I used on the fountain base, I had that stain out, and I stained the underside of one of the pieces that goes over the
copings.
The copings that goes over the fountain bowl. And it turned out way too dark. I think the contrast between the white that the fountain is and then that stain was just too much, even though it does not look dark on this fountain base. It just looks gray. Anyway, I was just kind of sweating bullets because I thought, well, this is a huge project. It's a lot of work. I don't even know how do you return things like that? Like the color's wrong. I didn't want to be that person. No, I don't think you do. Either. Anyway, we got it set up, and turns out it's the best.
Yeah.
And I love the color. I think it shines in that space. I think it's a really good complement to the shed that's out there. And the water, I love that it doesn't have notches. Like, the water comes off every area of that fountain, and it's spectacular, especially when the sun's coming down at night and it's just like right at the fountain level shining through that water. It's just, I can't wait to see it again.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so pretty. And the kids loved it. They were playing around in it, although we kind of put a halt to that. I get too stressed about concrete pieces and kids, even though our kids aren't wild. They don't hang off stuff, but you never know. And so they can be around the outside putting their hands in, but they are not getting in it. They get in the pond with adult supervision. The last part of August, I created a flower bed in the middle of the parterre with a sundial, like a real pretty statue she's holding a sundial. And then I did lavender, the sweet romance, and then boxwoods around it. And I just did it straight in the gravel because I didn't want to create a mulched flower bed right there. Because in the end, the boxwoods will create a ring, and it will kind of be the border instead of like a mulch to gravel. I don't know. I just couldn't think of how to separate the mulch from the gravel in a nice way.
The boxwoods will.
The boxwoods will, in the end. I love it. And that was another project I thought, I don't know if the scale is right on this piece. I don't want it taking away from the glorious structure of the Hartley in the back. I don't want it blocking it. So I don't want anything too tall, but is it weighty enough? And I think it just turned out perfect. I love it. Also, the plantings in the parterre, because you could see the geraniums and the Supertunia Supertunia Bordeaux in the areas underneath the crab apples. That was a phenomenal pairing.
That was a stunner.
It was just an absolute stunner. And I think I loved it so much because the geraniums, I mean, you know how they grow. They're not wild. They're not going to grow and then flop over. And that's what we had a problem with the Plain the Blue Salvia, which I love. But we planted it at the end caps of the Hartley, and it gets so big, it was flopped over the boxwoods.
I wonder if that's also because we have such a long growing season.
I don't know.
Like they have an opportunity to get that large and kind of flop over by the end of the season, whereas a lot of other growing zones just they don't go as long as we do.
I don't know. I feel like that plant's pretty aggressive and it grows pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But they just get huge, and I know that. Maybe I planted them too close to the boxwoods, but I just appreciated that the geraniums were the right height. They were just in color all season long and just really striking. It was a very striking look. Beginning of September, we did another garden tour, and I felt like that was another good one that showed like early fall, like right after the heat of summer, what things were still looking like. It was still pretty hot. And we had quite a lot of smoke this summer as well. But I feel like things were coming along, and you could see, I mean, we did right after that an update on the grass behind the barn. The new grass that you put in around the play set, and then also...
We mulched.
Did we mulch that day too? Oh, that was
super satisfying.
Oh my gosh. I mean, the more of that powdery white dirt that we can cover over, the better. And we use compost for mulch. So that compost is just working its way in and helping condition the soil. And yes, we'd still grow in it, all that business, but we keep it under control. I think we do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, end of September, we moved and set up high tunnels. I say we, I mean Paul and Bethany. They set up, we had ordered 2 high tunnels, exactly identical high tunnels years ago. And one has been sitting on a pallet for years, just sitting there. We hadn't really needed it or we didn't have a place for it. So Paul put that one up first by the red barn. And then he and Bethany took down the one we had up in the dirt lands and moved it and set it back up parallel the other one. And then I went out and moved all the plants. That was a beast of a day.
I think Paul counted and he's set up or torn down a high tunnel 11 times now.
He's really good at it.
Yeah.
He knows how to do it. Having those high tunnels is so nice. In fact, we need to get out into the mom high tunnel and cut those back and clean up a little bit. We've been working through the areas. We've just got a few left to clean up and organize. So first week of October, malad trees started to trickle in. We were able to install, it was like 11 or 12.
For people who don't know, when you say malad trees, they're like, what is a malad tree?
So it's Malad Tree Farm. So, and he's got the big trees that we have been able to install here and there. You know, we've installed several of his
over
trees,
the years.
But we were able to get in on a really good deal. And it was an unfortunate situation where a man had a tree farm. It was his passion project. His family has acres and acres and acres. They farm. But he had this one section where he wanted to do a tree farm. And he, sadly, I think he had cancer and he passed away. And nobody else was really interested in carrying on this passion project because it wasn't their passion project, it was his. And so it kind of sat in disrepair for 5 or 6 years, something like that. And so they contacted Nathan Malad and just said, we are going to farm this land the way we know how. We're not going to do trees. So you can come get whatever you want. Like, they gave him a really good deal. He paid for the trees, but it was a good deal. And he called us and just said, hey, like, do you guys want to come out to this field and pick out any trees you want? Like, we'll move them. I'll give you a really good deal on them. So we were able to buy them for a lot. I mean, we got a lot of tree for the money. And so we picked them out. Most of them came from there. I think we did get like 2 from Malad Tree Farm proper.
Yeah.
And one of them is the great big one behind the Dream Stream, which I do think I have listed in here as a highlight. But they're gorgeous. It feels like, or seems like, looks like they're all doing well.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, they weren't cared for a while.
They hadn't been root pruned or anything like that for years.
So we'll just kind of cross our fingers and hopefully, you know, I watered them really well. This winter has been amazing for moisture.
Yes.
It's just been raining. And the 10-day, it looks like 7 of the next 10 days will be rainy.
Yeah.
And that's so nice in the wintertime because it hasn't been windy and it hasn't been ridiculously cold. So, I mean, our ground is just getting absolutely saturated, which is great when you've got transplants. I mean, these are... And
also, rain in the valley means snow in the mountains, which is how we all get our water down here. And the aquifers around here are insane. They're awesome. They're really good source because of all the years of irrigation that have been done in this valley because we're so highly agricultural in this area. But anyway, but it's always a good thing. Like last year, they didn't know where to put the water. Like things were so full. Yeah. You know, so we'll have another good year of that, I think, which is great. October the 7th was the first day of the Dream Stream install. And that was, I think, it was a 3-day project, but it kind of spanned over 5 because everybody got here on one day and we all had dinner together and everybody was able to walk around, look at stuff. And then it was like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, where we're like, go
3 full working days.
The fact that was created in that short of a time. I mean, there was some prep work done in terms of like everything was here. It was organized, all the equipment was here, all the stones were here, everything was here. And then on Sunday, people came back in the morning to get final shots because morning is a really great time to get shots of that space. And then also like we did a bunch of like little videos together and just kind of hung out a little bit more before everybody had to go catch their planes to go home. And people came from like New Jersey, New York, Texas, Seattle area, like just everywhere, you know, Arizona. Yeah, there were a lot of really wonderful artists here and it was fun. We had a really good time together. It was fun getting to know some new people because there were some people that came back from the first build. And then there were some new ones as well. And then October the 10th was when the last Malad tree was installed.
Okay.
And I was so hoping that we were going to be able to install that on Saturday afternoon. We just weren't able to coordinate because I didn't know exactly when we were going to be done either. I mean, if we would have shot for an evening, it probably would have worked. But that went in Monday, the day after everybody left. But I was just hoping we could have that. And it's a glorious tree. And you see it from where we sit in the great room. And we both commented several times, like, that was the perfect placement for the tree. Yeah. It fills in the gap between the Hartley and then the brick patio. Like, you have a clear view of that pathway straight to the tree. Oh, it's so pretty. It has lights on it right now. Yeah. Some white lights. So pretty. On October the 25th, we went and did a tour of the new warehouse.
Oh, nice.
So the same weekend that we were doing the Dream Stream, there was a team of people moving the whole warehouse. So I wasn't even down there I was down for 0% of that. Yeah. I didn't even see the new warehouse until it was completely set up. Like, shout out to the whole team that was down there working on that, because that's a huge job. I mean, we have pallet racking, and I mean, all of that is moved with us because that's ours. We bought all of that. So that was a big job, and we just wanted to show you where things were at, how it was looking, and because it's only there because you guys support us and have made it possible for us, which we are so incredibly grateful for. So from time to time, I don't want to make that a major, I'm a minor on that, but it's still a big deal to us, and it's still going on, and it's like growing, and there's some really fun things in the works for this next year. So from time to time, we'll go down and just kind of give you guys updates. On October the 29th, we planted the linden trees in the formal flower garden. So there were 12 of them. It ended up being a huge project because we had to line them up. They had to be from a drone shot. I hate that I have to think of everything in terms of drone shots, but when you're dealing with a formal garden, you kind of need to make sure
it's got to be lined up.
Yeah, and there are a couple of them that have settled. Like, there's one that settled kind of like, so we're going to either need to get in there and like tip it or stake it back, or, and that's just bound to happen. And then shortly thereafter, November the 1st, we planted 500 boxwoods in the garden. You dug every single hole. I planted every single boxwood. Yeah. I was actually sore from that one.
Well, it was like 2 days of planting. Again, if we were just planting that many boxwoods, it wouldn't be a big deal. But lining them up takes a long time.
It does. And I have them, they're exact. I use the exact number of boxwoods with pretty much the exact spacing. There was a couple spots where I had to fudge just like a little bit, but visually you cannot tell, especially once they're a hedge. But I'm excited for that space. I have, to be honest, not thought beyond the boxwoods.
Really?
Mm-mm. I know what I want the pathways to look like through each one of them, but I just don't know what I want to line. Like what the pathways are going to be versus the planting area. I haven't really thought through that, and we just need to sit and talk about it and see what you think and all of that. But that will be a fun thing to develop over the coming years. Then on November the 4th, the gate was installed.
Oh, man.
Like maybe the single best purchase.
Just about.
I know. I think there's a lot of fun purchases we've been able to make, like the Hartley, for example, that we're sitting in. I mean, what a dream this structure has been. But if I were to have to tell you what the most like used or practical purchase we have made, it'd be the plastic greenhouse that's heated next to the barn, the studio renovation, and the gate.
Really?
I think so. The gate has brought so much peace of mind. And it's gorgeous. Yeah. It's not done yet. We don't have the pillars done or the wings. We're having a deliveries hut built that will look like the pump house, the well house behind the barn, because we have a little vault. It's just not big enough. Right. So we're going to develop that area, and I'm looking forward to that. But it turned out the scale was beautiful. I remember the first day it was in. I thought, like,
it was so big.
That's so big. Like, did we overshoot on this one a little bit? But it turns out I think it's just perfect. Yeah. When you look at the scope of the lawn beyond it needs to be sizable to make sense. So that was put in, and it now has wreaths on it that look really pretty, and it turns away like no less than 5 cars a day.
Yeah. Yeah. People just turning around
that we're not planning on having here or have invited to be here. Right. So anyway, that's been just so much peace of mind, especially with the kids being out here, being able to just kind of let them have a little more, they get more freedom once they're a little older anyway. And Samantha's pretty, we don't really let her run around without close eyes on her. But Benjamin has more freedom to kind of go and explore, and I don't feel as checked about because there's not random cars flying through here. Right. And then about a week after that, the locust tree in front of the kitchen was removed. And that was a bummer. That was a bummer of a day. I couldn't watch it. I can watch most tree removals with glee most of the time, because usually they're coming out because they are posing a huge threat or an issue or whatever. And we plant so many trees in their stead that it ends up fine. But that was a huge loss right there. There was a huge canopy that shaded much of the fireplace area. It shaded that whole space. The lilac also needs to come out, which means every single hellebore in that space is going to have to move. But we're thinking of some fun things that we can do in that space that will really make, again, the garden more usable. I don't know.
Are you going to do a kitchen garden?
Well, that's really on the forefront of my brain. And I know, so our raised bed garden along the fence line, we've talked about this already, but our neighbors are going to be building a shop close to the back of their fence. And there's a little lane between where the arbs are. There's a lane and then the back of their fence, and it's going to be a giant shop. So we're going to see that. I know Aaron would rip that garden out like today. Yeah. If I gave him the green light, we'd rip that out and we would see because we've got till March to latch on to any more of those malad trees that for a good deal. And so we've thought about taking out that raised bed garden and putting in just a really thick, nice border right there, which will be, the pros are kind of outweighing the cons to do that. One, it would provide a nice block. Two, it would provide shade for our cars where we park our cars. Three, it would actually allow more space for maneuvering cars around in there instead of the fence with the lavender in front. And then the things about that garden space right now, I've loved it. But the arbs right behind it don't do well because I don't know why. That section always struggles, and they back beds in that space. I think all the arbor roots have grown up into them. Yeah. The soil is so hard in those raised beds. The raised beds are starting to fall apart. The fence, the arbors are falling apart that the Colette roses are on. So it needs to see some repair anyway. Like we'd have to take those raised beds down and scrape all of that stuff out. Right. And I don't know what that would do to the arbs. But they're getting increasingly hard to work in. And honestly, having a garden right out our kitchen door where, I just look out and say like, oh, I'm going to go grab, some herbs, or, I can grow like 1 tomato plant or 2 tomato plants, really close to the kitchen. This last year, all of my peppers and tomatoes were in the cut flower garden. What a pain, Right. I have to be thinking about it earlier in the day instead of like in the midst of cooking and think, oh crap, I need, this or that. And I got to go all the way out there to get it. So it would be nice to have something close. And now we'll have the sun to do it right there. It kind of makes my stomach sick feeling though. Sure, like thinking about tearing it out. Yeah, although, I don't really relish the thought of a shop background. Right. And I'm happy for them. I mean, I would want to build a shop too. I don't begrudge them that decision whatsoever. Sure. And we are in complete control of, controlling it from our side, what we're seeing. So that's not a big deal. I'm not sad about that part of it. I'm happy for them, but that space has just been, it was one of the first ones we put in. Sure. And so I have a lot of feelings into that space, which I don't do that very often. I don't get a lot of feelings for the spaces, but that's just been such a sweet area. Okay, now we're almost to the end. We've done a lot of holiday stuff. That's what I wrote on my list. Holiday stuff. We've just done random things. Wreaths, garland, tree in here. I didn't do a tour inside because I just wasn't feeling it this year. I did set up there's 6 trees in there. I'm ready to take it all down. I think that's why. Yeah. I'm ready to move on. But it's just been a really nice, relaxed season. I feel like we've really been able to enjoy it, and the kids are just the perfect age. Yeah, they're loving it. 6 and 3. It's magic. And I feel like we've been able to relax a little bit more this year. You need to try to take your glasses off. Can't quite do it. My eyes are too tender. It's so overcast today. I know. I don't know. Even on overcast days, my eyes just, I don't know. Benjamin's the same way. Have you noticed that? Both of our kids. Yeah. They walk out. There's like a couple mini errands. Yeah. They walk out and they're like, oh, sunglasses. Got to go back in. Can't see. Yeah. Get my sunglasses. But yeah, it's just been a beautiful holiday season. I still have a little bit of wrapping to do, but we'll get there. And on November 27th, we did the lit spheres. We made those, and we did a Christmas light tour, which the Christmas lights are beautiful. Yeah. This year, I'm really happy with them. And I know that you were looking at the tour from 2 years ago when we didn't have any of the extra space. Right. And our lights were much more condensed, so it looked like we had a lot more going on. But I actually prefer them to be... Oh, really? I do. So next year, what I want to do is I want to start at the house, and I want to work away from the house and start using all of our lights, but basically light everything. So every tree, every shrub,
and just work from the house out. And so it may not be as large of a display, but it'll be a really condensed display. I just want to try it for 1 year. And I want to do colored like C9 lights on the house.
Yes.
And try to make the house look a little bit more like a gingerbread house.
We need to get a hold of, and I just saw, I think I followed him on Instagram. There's a company that does the true tone, like the old school looking C9.
I watched a couple videos and a guy was like, they look good. They're not perfect. They're not truly like the old vintage lights, but they're close.
I just would like the LEDs on the house not to look like the new LED multis.
Yeah.
I like them in the small form around our trees and stuff. I think that's a really good look, but those kind of like Nick, Monica's husband, calls them fruitcake lights.
Yeah,
kind of like a fruitcake look
term
to
for
them. Yeah, and they're just so pretty.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I have written down is on December 11th, you did a hoarfrost tour.
Oh yeah.
We had an inversion for like 3 weeks.
We don't have that all the time.
No.
Not every year does that happen, and it's really pretty.
It is gorgeous. When you have high pressure, there was a lot of humidity and a lot of fog. And it just piled up on the trees. And it looked like if it was ice, it would have been probably an issue. It would have been too hard on our plants. But it was just like you could tap the branch and all the frost would come down like snow. It was gorgeous. It
was really cold filming that. And then shortly after that on YouTube, I watched this video of like some group of people, I forget where, but it's like how they survive in negative 70-degree temperatures. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking to myself, because it was filmed really well, and I was thinking to myself, whoever filmed that, like here I was going out there and what was it, like, 20 some degree weather.
That's cold.
It's cold, but it's not
especially
negative.
when you're doing something fiddly with your fingers.
Yeah,
and
it's not negative 60 or negative 70.
Still, you took one for the team, I feel like, to do that.
Yeah.
I was inside by the fire.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely beautiful. But you guys, the week we've had, it's been a true gift. It's been like, there was one day close to 50. It was like 47, 48, and sunny and still. And we've had, today is overcast, but it's warm. It's been like 42 or something. And our whole 10-day is in the mid to high 40s. And I think the lowest temperature, and only one of them is below freezing, is 28. And I think that's tonight. And the rest of them are well above freezing.
And lots of moisture.
Lots and lots of moisture.
Which is great. Fantastic. We never complain about moisture.
No. You guys, I think that is it for the recap of 2024. So when you actually sit down and think about what you've done through the year, especially when you document everything, it really kind of piles up there. Yeah. And there were a lot of videos when we were looking through, I thought, I want to talk about that or this, or when I planted this. And you were kind of like, that, you plant lots of things, and people know that, let's talk about the highlights of what we did. And I think we encapsulated it fairly well here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, just kind of looking back on some of the things from this year. And next year should be really fun as well. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to think if we've got any massive projects in the works.
I don't think there'll be any really big ones, but I'm excited to button up even more some areas. We'll plant some more trees out in the north garden. Yeah. And I think it'll just be really good. We'll plant a lot more evergreens in the Dirtlands area. And so that'll keep getting more and more bulked up and kind of become more and more of a hedge over the next couple of years. I think that's going to look really nice.
Yeah. I don't think we've got any big installs or anything like that.
We'll see if Greg wants to come back for something.
He said he'd do whatever. He'd do whatever I wanted. But I'm kind of like, well, do we want to add on? No, I don't want to add on to what we currently have. It's so beautiful. Yeah, we did talk about putting it in a rec pond somewhere at some point, but you kind of would rather have a straight up swimming pool, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if we want to go that route specifically. I don't know that we're decided either way, but we'll see what happens. We're just excited. I'm excited for a new year.
I think it'll be a good year.
I do too, and I'm kind of going in, I haven't really sat down and planned out anything. I haven't planned out any seed starting. I've started some seeds, but most of my projects kind of happen because I'm feeling like it that day. Sure. I really don't plan a whole lot out. But I feel like maybe I should do a little more planning. I really feel like this year I need to sit down and get serious about that front flower bed. Whether or not that involves, I think I need to tear the whole brick walkway out. I think that's wrecking it for me. Sure. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video and for just supporting us and watching videos throughout this last year. We really, truly appreciate it, and we truly love our job. And being able to share this kind of stuff with you guys, it's a gift. It absolutely is. And it is a lot of work, but it is a gift. At the same time, we're very thankful for it. So anyway, I hope you guys have all had a great year as well. I hope you've had a wonderful holiday season, and we wish you the best starting out this next year. And we will see you in the next video.